Good morning, everybody, or afternoon. All right, we are now gonna do month 6. There is actually 2 blocks in month 6. You're making 2 of the large one and 4 of the small ones. So on this first part, we are gonna do the cutting. So I have laid out the background fabric. So I laid the stripology ruler down. I lined it up at the bottom here, and I'm gonna cut one strip that is 4 inches. So we got one strip at 4, and then where you need 2 strips at 3.5, and then after 2 strips at 3.5, we need 1 strip at 2, and then we need 2 strips that are at 6.5. So I'm going to move these and then slide my fabric down for my 2 6.5-inch strips. Line the ruler again up at the bottom. Now that we cut those, we are going to go back to our first strip, which was the 4-inch strip. We're going to cut 4 4-inch squares and then 16 2-inch squares. So this is double layered, and we need 4 4-inch squares. Now from here, what I'm going to do is, so there's my 4 4-inch squares. Next, I'm going to take this. This is a 4-inch strip. We're going to cut this down to 2. And we now need 16 2-inch squares. So I'm going to take these and layer them. So now we need 16, so 2-inch squares. Put those off to the side. Next, we want to grab the 2 3.5-inch strips. Now from the 3.5-inch strips, we need to cut 2 3.5 by 12.5 and 24 2 by 3.5. So I'm going to take my first strip, and we need 2 at 3.5 by 12.5. And next, now I'm going from here, I'm going to cut 2-inch rectangles by 3.5. There's my 2 rectangles that are 3.5 by 12.5, and now I have 2, 4, 6 of the 2 by 3.5. We need a total of 24 of those. The strip is 3.5, and now we're going to do 2 inches. So there. And we need 24, and I have that there. So there's my strip for my 2 inches by 3.5. Now we're going to take the 6.5-inch strip, and we're going to cut 4 6.5 by 12.5 and 4 6.5 by 6.5. So I am actually going to layer this, and if you're not comfortable with it, do just one at a time. So there is, we need 4 at 12.5. 12.5, and now we need 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. So that is all of our white pieces for all of our blocks. Next, we are going to go to L1, which is this piece here. And L1, we are going to cut 1 strip at 5 inches. Now, we're going to take that strip that's 5 inches, and we're going to cut, because we saved part of this, it's going to go into month 8. So I need 4-inch squares, but this piece is cut at 5.5. So I am going to go 0. I'm going to turn the block and cut this down to 4 inches. So there's my 4 4-inch squares. This remaining piece here, this one, label it and put it in for month 8. Next, we are going to go to L4. L4, we want to cut a 3.5-inch strip. After we cut the 3.5-inch strip, we need a total of 8 2 by 3.5. So here's my 8 2 by 3.5. This remaining piece here, place this one in month 11. Next, we are going to go to M1. M1, we need 1 2-inch strip. From the 2-inch strip, we are now going to cut 16 2-inch squares. There's our 16 2-inch squares. After we do the 16 2-inch squares, now we're going to go to M2. M2 also needs to be a 2-inch strip cut into 16 2-inch squares. There's my 2-inch strip. Next, we are going to go to D2. D2, cut 2 2-inch strips. Next, we need to subcut these into 32 2-inch squares. So I'm going to layer them. So there's my 32 2-inch squares, and that is all for the cutting. Okay, everybody, we are now going to start with the big block, and we make 2 of these. So here's our background, the 3.5 by 2 inch rectangle, and we are going to then take our M1 piece, which is the dark piece, and we're going to take our background, which is the 2 by 3.5 inch rectangle. We are going to draw a line on the 2 inch square. So I'm going to take my chocolate roller. We're going to draw a line on top of the square we are making flying geese. You can kind of see that, I hope. So there's my line. We're going to place right sides together. On here, I'm going to do the flying geese. I want the line going from bottom left to top right. You're going to sew right on the line. Start up here and not in the corner. You will have less problems of the fabric being pushed into your needle plate if we start up here. So sew on that line. After we sew on that line, we are going to get this piece here. I am going to place my ruler on the sewn line, and I'm going to cut 1/4 inch off. After I cut 1/4 inch off, I am going to go in and I'm going to press this seam open. I like to press them open, as you have all discovered, and you can see here where I have pressed the seam open. And now I'm going to take my next one, and again, of course we're going to come in and we are going to draw the line on that. We are going to place these right sides together, and on this one we want the line to go from top left to bottom right when we're looking at the flying geese. And we're going to start sewing up here, and we're going to sew right across the line. After we've sewn across the line, I'm going to take the ruler, and we're going to place this on the sewn line. I'm going to cut 1/4 inch away from the sewn line, and then we're going to come in, we're going to press that seam open. All right, that's the first set of flying geese. You're going to repeat the same process with the next one, but on this one, now this one is going to be M2 and L4. So here's my L4, M2. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to draw a line, place right sides together, and the line should be going, place right sides together. Line should be going from bottom left to top right. Start sewing here and sew on the line. After you have sewn on the line, you would press the seam open. After you've sewn on the line, you would come in, cut 1/4 inch away from your sewn line, press that seam open, and you can see here where I have pressed the seam open. I am going to take my M2 piece, and again draw the diagonal line on it and place it on the L2 right sides together, and we're going to have the line going from top left to bottom right. We're going to sew directly on the line, and we're going to start here at the top left, and then we're going to trim that up, press the seam open, and you can see here on the back where I have pressed the seams open. Now that my seams are pressed open, I'm going to take my first block that was the background and the M1 piece, and I'm going to take the L2, M2. So we want to put these flying geese together. So I have the background facing this way and the L2 going this way. We are going to place those on top of each other. Now, when you're looking at this, I want this point to line up with the previous point. So I'm going to come in, open that up, and you can see where my line here is right here. You can see where I'm lining up this line. And when I bring it up, I want this line to match the bottom line. So I'm going to make sure that that lines up, and I'm going to pin that, and then we're going to stitch 1/4 inch. When you're stitching, you should be able to come along. Your needle should hit right here at this point. Don't go into the background or the L2 piece, but right here at the point is where your needle should hit. So that will make those flying geese. Next part, we are going to take our background piece that's 4 inches by 4 inches, and we are going to take our L1 that is 4 inches by 4 inches. We are going to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of L1. We are going to take this piece, place it on the background piece, and I like to use the Wonder clips. Clip there, and then I'm going to clip here. So I'm getting this lined up. This is so it helps keep it from shifting. And I am going to then, I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of my drawn line. The instructions call for a scant 1/4 inch. So if you bring your foot directly right up just a little bit past the line, that will work as your scant if you have your single hole needle plate on. And you're going to do that for both pieces, both sides. Once we've sewn on both sides, so you can see here where I've done that, I'm going to take my ruler. I am going to cut on the drawn line. Then after we cut on the draw line, we're going to come in and press the seam open, or you could press it to the L1 piece, or if you have the blue background, you can press it to the blue background. After we have pressed the seam open, I must square up this block, and we got to square it up to 3.5 inches. So if we take this piece and place it like this, I'm going to take my Creative Grids ruler, which has, and a square one is always preferable on this, and we are going to place this 45-degree line on my seam line, and I'm going to adjust the ruler because I want to make sure that there is enough. There's just a little bit of fabric hanging on the outside of the ruler and outside of the 3.5 inch line, and there is. So I will come in, trim this up. If you have a rotating mat, this is very handy. We're going to turn it, get this lined up for the 3.5 around, but I'm also going to make sure my 45-degree line is on my seam line. We're going to get that lined up, and then we're going to trim. And once we have trimmed that, we are going to take our D1 piece. We're going to draw a line on D1 on the back side of it, on the wrong side. We're going to draw a line on it. We're going to place that on top of this square that we trimmed up to 3.5 by 3.5, and we want to place it on the L1 fabric, not the background fabric. So place it on the L1. Your drawn line should be parallel with your seam line. You're going to sew on top of this line. After you sew on top of that line, you're going to come in with your ruler, go and cut a 1/4 inch away from your sewn line. Now, you can either press this open or you could just press this over like that. I actually just pressed mine over. I did not need to press it open. Now that we have done that, we are going to go to putting the blocks together. This is what we've all done before. So I'm placing my blocks out so that you can see it. Now, when I place it out, as you notice, the background is all to the outside. So this is a great way to double check yourself to make sure everything's in order. My background is facing out, that I don't have a piece like this, then we know it's wrong. So my background is all on the outside. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew this to this, then this to this, and you're going to sew your rows together. So once your rows have been sewn together, they will look like this. And you are going to then take this, sew it to this, and then take this one and sew it to that piece. I have sewed my rows together. Your block should resemble this, not the background, of course. You are then going to take your background strips that were cut at 2. You're going to sew them to both sides of this piece here. After you've sewn that on, then you're going to sew this to the top, and you're going to do that to both blocks, and your big block is done. Next, we are going to work on the small block. So we're making flying geese for the small block. All right, so now we're making the small block. We want our 2 by 3.5 inch rectangle. We want right side up. So we're going to do exactly what we did with the other flying geese. Then we're going to take our D2 background fabric. I'm going to draw a line. We're going to place this piece on top of our background piece. We're going to have the line going from bottom left to top right. We're going to start sewing here and sew directly on the line. After we sew on the line, then we're going to come in. We're going to cut a 1/4 inch away from the sewn line. And then we're going to press this seam open. And you can see there where I have pressed it open. Then we're going to take our other D1 piece, draw the line, place it right sides together. You're going to have your line going from top left to bottom right. You're going to sew directly on the line. And then after you sew directly on the line, then we are going to cut a 1/4 inch away from the sewn line, press this seam open, and you are done with your flying geese. Okay, so for each block, you're going to take 2 of your flying geese here, and then we're going to take the background, and we're going to take a background piece, and we're going to sew it to each side of 2 of these, and this is for just 1 block, so you would repeat this for the other 3 blocks. We're going to sew this piece to this piece, this one to this one, and we're going to sew that to the edges. And then we're going to take 2 of those flying geese pieces, and then we're going to take our kaleidoscope center, and we're going to place this on here. Notice my background is facing out, so I'm going to sew this to this edge, this to this edge. Once we have sewn them together, they're going to look like this, and then we are going to sew the rows together, this one to that one, and this one to this one. After you have sewn them together, you are going to take your 6.5-inch square, you're going to sew that to the top of the piece, and then you're going to take your 6.5 and you're going to sew that to the right hand side, and these will be the corners. And then I am going to show you next what we're going to do. I'm going to show in another video that will be sent out later about putting these blocks together to make the center of the quilt, since we are halfway through the quilt. All right, if you guys have any questions, call me at the store. Everybody take care. All right, talk to you later. Bye.